Well, children fleeing the chaos in Afghanistan are arriving here in the United States without the rest of their families. CBS News immigration reporter Camilo Montoya-Galvez broke the story on CBSNews.com. He reports immigration officials are working to find these kids a place to stay, and they expect more unaccompanied refugee children to come here over the next several days. I want to bring in Camilo to discuss more of his reporting. Camilo, so explain how it comes to pass that some of these children who are looking for a better life, their parents are obviously looking for a better life for them, how they end up here without their parents.
Hi, good morning, Vlad. That's right. We now know that there are unaccompanied children among the thousands of Afghan refugees being relocated and resettled here in the U.S. We know, Vlad, that at least 34 of these refugee children have been designated as unaccompanied minors upon their arrival to the U.S. Some of these children traveled with family members who were not their parents and were initially designated as unaccompanied minors, but then were reunited with those non-parental family members after they were processed here in the U.S. But some of these children, Vlad, came rather completely alone and without any family members or parents. They are now in U.S. government custody. The Office of Refugee Resettlement within the Department of Health and Human Services is now responsible for housing these unaccompanied children in shelters and foster care programs until it finds suitable sponsors for them or until the children turn 18. So while relatively few of these children have arrived in the U.S. so far, the number is likely to increase because, as you know, there are thousands of Afghan evacuees in U.S. military bases in the Middle East and Europe awaiting U.S. processing and security vetting and more likely to come in the near future. We know that shelter operators have also been instructed to prepare for the arrival of more unaccompanied children from Afghanistan, and this just adds another layer of complexity to these humanitarian, legal, and really logistical challenges that the Biden administration is facing as it frantically moves to resettle thousands of Afghan refugees following the Taliban takeover of the country.
And so, Camilo, where are we housing some of these children? And are they able to accommodate them? There's various needs that some of them will have, for example, religious.
Sure. So just like migrant children who cross the U.S.-Mexico border without their parents, these unaccompanied refugee minors from Afghanistan have to be placed in shelters or foster care programs run by the refugee agency within HHS. And HHS has to care for them, provide them access to counsel and other services like medical services to ensure their safety and well-being while they remain in U.S. government custody. So they will remain in the legal and physical custody of the government until they are released or until they become of legal age. We know that HHS has told us that they are only sending these Afghan unaccompanied minors to shelters that can actually provide linguistically and culturally appropriate services for these children. So that would include meals and religious services that can accommodate the particular needs of these children, because as you know, most of the unaccompanied children that the U.S. government is housing right now are from Central America and they speak Spanish or indigenous languages.
Will the children, Camilo, be able to qualify for permanent resident status?
That's a great question. These children are being allowed to enter the U.S. through something called humanitarian immigration parole, Vlad, and this allows the Department of Homeland Security to authorize the entry of immigrants who would otherwise be ineligible to enter the U.S. because they don't have visas. So these are children fleeing Afghanistan who are being granted this humanitarian parole, but this is a temporary measure that allows them to stay in the U.S. on a temporary basis, and it does not allow them to adjust to permanent status. So for the kids who are reunited with family members from Afghanistan here in the U.S., they could potentially be included in family-based immigration petitions like those for special immigrant visas, which, as you know, are for Afghans who assisted the U.S. war effort. That not only allows the principal applicants to gain U.S. status, but also spouses and children. But if they are truly alone, if they are truly unaccompanied here in the U.S., Vlad, they will not only remain in U.S. government custody, but they will have to seek other forms of immigration relief like asylum to be able to stay here permanently.
You know, we've seen this before, Camilo, obviously with the fall of Saigon in 1975 and the large influx of refugees that we saw coming in from Southeast Asia, primarily Vietnam. And there's a wonderful story on NPR now of the families of some of those refugees who came here to the United States from Vietnam, who then enjoyed the blessings of liberty that we all enjoy here, are now seeking to house some of those refugees from Afghanistan. I just think it's a wonderful story. How are some of these refugees sort of being treated in the communities where they are being processed, where they're being held before they hopefully get to start a new life here in the United States? If it's any indication of what we saw, for example, as recently as the 1970s, Southeast Asians have contributed greatly to the fabric of this country, are essentially part of the fabric of this country now, and we're all the better for it.
Those are excellent points, Vlad. So the Afghans who are chosen to be relocated to the U.S. first undergo security vetting in third countries at these military installations in Bahrain, Kuwait, Doha, Germany, and Spain that the U.S. is administering. And when they come here, they are being first taken to one of 4 military sites in New Jersey, Virginia, Texas, and Wisconsin, where they undergo coronavirus testing, medical checks, and they are provided work permits, green cards if applicable, and travel arrangements. So after these refugees are released from these military bases in the U.S., Vlad, resettlement agencies, nonprofit groups take the lead in helping them integrate into American society. So they provide them career training and help them secure affordable housing and job training, and they go on with their lives here in the U.S. and they gain permanent status. And so you mentioned the comparison to the resettlement of Vietnamese refugees back in the 1970s. The U.S. military right now, Vlad, has been instructed to be able to accommodate up to 50,000 Afghan refugees. That is a massive operation, but it is important to note that it's much smaller than the number of Vietnamese refugees that were resettled after the fall of Saigon in 1975.
Yeah, it's an important reminder, Camilo. I think that when you see what little resistance there has been to the refugee situation when it comes to Afghanistan, let's just remember that, you know, we're talking almost millions in the case of the Southeast Asians, the Vietnamese in 1975. And as I said, you know, they are part of the fabric of who we are as a country today. Camilo, always great to have your reporting, my friend. Thank you.
Thanks, Vlad.